We are super excited to dig into Follow Up Boss basics today. Just wanted to cover a couple of things first. We're going to be really focused on really truly the basics of Follow Up Boss. When I say basics, this is by no stretch, in my opinion, just newbie type stuff. This is the fact that there are some things in real estate and in CRM world that just work. And I think sometimes we tend to overcomplicate things, and we tend to get into setting up crazy automations and crazy action plans and crazy things before we have some of our core basics really locked down. And so first and foremost, I want to dig into stages, because in my opinion, stages really power everything. If you get your stages right, all your smart lists and action plans and automations and all the things will run much more smoothly if your stages are right. And I think also having a clear strategy so that people, if you're a team or a brokerage, people know what to do. They know what lead means. They know what nurture means. They know what hot prospect means. Meghan, you've seen hundreds of Follow Up Boss accounts. Like, what's your take or philosophy on stages?
Yeah, so we talk about this a lot as a success team when we're working with teams. And we usually say things like, it doesn't matter whether you call them apples, oranges, and bananas, right? But that you need just a process, and everybody on your team needs to kind of follow that process. So I think one of our boss method rules, always update time frame, because we like to think of stage as that main category for where somebody is at in your pipeline. Right. And that's so key to making everything else that you can do with Follow Up Boss work.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to try today to talk a little bit too for users of Follow Up Boss, meaning if you are on a team or if you are not setting up the account, but simply using it, and also touch enough on the setup. So we're relevant for a lot of people, but also don't want to totally pigeonhole, either, only cover one side of that. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. On the admin side, if you are going to be changing stages, that is under admin, and then stages is a little ways over here. And that's just going to show you all your stages. Follow Up Boss, this kind of blew my mind recently. If you're a newer user with a newer account, the stages are pretty great out of the box. I know they've evolved a little bit over time, but I'm pretty happy with the stages now that come in a new account. But you can edit these. You cannot edit lead and closed or trash. Those are mandatory stages. Closed is, and certainly used to be, really deeply tied to reporting as part of the reason you can't edit it, because it needs to be there to be able to say that these people went through this process and now they are closed. And the same for lead is the default for people to come into. So you can create or edit existing ones. You can also change the order of them by dragging them here, which is the order of how they appear in a client record. So if you're going to go in here and change the stages, they'll be in that order. And I find it really helpful to get them in an order that makes sense, so you're not jumping around. Typically, hopefully someone goes from lead to hot prospect to active client to pending to closed. So that's the hope, but making it easy and getting them in the right order, to me is certainly an important step. Meghan, do you have other feedback on that?
Well, I mean, a good question to actually ask everybody who's joined today is if you have your Follow Up Boss handy. And this will depend on whether you're sort of an account owner, admin, or an agent, but how many people are currently in your lead stage? Because this is going to indicate, I'd love to hear that from some folks. Because
of stages.
Yeah, because what we see a lot is very typical is we'll hop into an account and we'll just see tons and tons of leads. And the biggest problem with that, right, is then who do you prioritize? Who are these people? What's happened? So it'd be super interesting if you all could take a look there.
We'd love to hear you drop that. If you guys could drop that in the chat, if you're comfortable sharing how many people you have in lead stage. One other Look at that, 23-29. Sweet. Do we have a prize for the winner? And is the winner, is this like golf? Is it the lower number?
I'll send you some follow-up bus swag. I think it would be like, man, the winner is really who has the most and like changes their process after this.
Right, right,
you know?
right. Takes action.
Yeah, send me an email and I'll send you some swag. But so the question on under prospect, can you edit? You can edit most of these, as Lee pointed out, right? So you don't have to adopt the follow-up boss system, but you want to adopt a system. And so, who are your hot leads that are like ready to buy, say, in the next like 1 to 3 months? Who are those people that you're really trying to book appointments with? Who are those people you've tried to contact, but you haven't made contact with yet? Who are the people that are brand new? Those are leads, by the way. And I'm sure all of these thousands of quote unquote leads they've been in the system for a while, right?
For a minute.
And who are those people that, this is an important one. We call it nurture in here, but you can call it whatever you want. Some people break nurture up into 2 different buckets. I mean, pick your poison. Like, you just need to pick something. But those are really important because I always share my own stories here. Like, I was looking to buy a home for a long time and not as long as I thought. I cut my time in half, and it's like, I probably reached out to 5 agents. Nobody followed up with me. So like, make sure you are categorizing those people, and building relationships and rapport. So.
And I kind of jumped right through this and I didn't do a good job of explaining it. Stage to me is critically important, that it is based on the time frame generally to transact. I mean, that's kind of the benchmark, of course, but stages are time-based. Sphere is not a stage. Sphere is a source, it's a tag, it's probably all those. But stage should be, where are they in the process? I've seen people have nurture and long-term nurture. I've seen 50 stages. Here's the problem. There's no definitive right answer, but I think if you're not really a power stage user, I would keep it to maybe 10 max. Another thing I've been doing a lot lately, and I'm not necessarily encouraging this, but I want to mention it. There's a pending stage, I believe, that comes naturally. I'm not a huge fan of a pending stage unless you have an internal staff that's going to update it. Like, don't expect an agent to actually push through. I'm thrilled to death if I can get an agent to move it from lead to hot prospect to active, and then maybe take over internally. Meaning that staff or management can then update once people start to go under contract, or a TC or whoever. But I think it's really important to get it in people's minds that these are the time to potentially transact, or motivation, maybe at least, if they're a long-term nurture or an unresponsive. That's also a time frame. If it's unresponsive, then the time frame basically means we have no freaking idea. But maybe those people don't need to be up on your radar. Maybe they need to get an action plan or something to that effect.
Yeah. Those ones are good for your pawns too. If you've created pawns and follow-up boss, that unresponsive bucket.
Yes, for sure. Which, speaking of, not to jump too far ahead, but you still need a stage in pawns. So unresponsive is a good stage to have that, but the people can be assigned to the pawn. We may or may not get into pawns today. We'll see if people want to go there. Lane has 3 in lead. So that's the golf style winner. We got some pretty solid counts going on here in the chat. Another thing I want to mention that's really important is that you can click, if again, you're an admin, you can see this. If you're not an admin, you simply won't see stages under admin. But you, as an admin or an owner or an admin, you can actually click on this number and it'll drill you down to all the people in the lead stage. Now, of course, you can use filters, you can use other ways to get here. But similar to Megan's point, this will drill you down to everybody in lead, and then you can click created and say created more than, say, 15 days ago, which is probably going to be everybody in this demo account. But this is a great way you can bulk move people who have been in lead for 15 days or more into nurture. Now, again, if you're on a team or with a brokerage, make sure you're following the team or company policy. But this is a great way to say, okay, if these people have really been in lead for 15 days, I'm going to bulk select them, select all there, and then change the stage to, in this case, I'm not going to do this in this account, but just you move them to nurture.
A quick on that. So that's a great thing to do, because I think when you're cleaning up all of those like thousands of leads, you have to mass action these, right? Like otherwise, you're never going to get through it. With the mass actions, there's no quick reversal. Like if you hit that and you update, it's updating. Of course, you could then go to all your nurtures and then mass update back to lead, but that's going to pull everybody that you have in there. So with those, just always be really careful. That's the only thing I'm cautioning here is that you're paying attention once you do it.
Yeah, and Megan, I'm glad you said that, because one tip, if you are doing this, especially in true bulk, is to potentially add a tag to all these people. So you could do the same thing, select all of them, add a tag, and I would just name it as clearly as you can possibly name it. Leads move to nurture 5, 6, 21. Or lead stage move to nurture stage 5, 6, 21. Just make it like uber clear. If there's ever a reason you might need to somehow reverse it or find those same people, or certainly if you're doing it on behalf of someone else on a team, then that's wise. When we work with people, I do that. I'm always terrified I'm going to, I'm just waiting for that person to say, no, we kept all our hottest prospect in nurture and you moved them to unresponsive or whatever. I'll be like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense, but okay. So I think stages, again, it's just so important to try to really move people through this process. Obviously, most of you probably aware of the funnel concept. And the idea is that at the top of the funnel, there's all these people, all the leads, everybody that comes in. And your goal is to get the people, narrow down to the people who are the most relevant for you to be talking to. So we want to go from 3,300 leads to 5 hot prospects. I mean, that's the whole point of doing all of this. So I guess hopping back into the stages, I'm trying to think if there's any other relevant stages. I'm a big fan of active client and then tagging buyer or seller, because then the problem is you get into buy. If you name this buyer, if you want to use a buyer stage, I would still recommend maybe naming it active buyer or like contracted buyer or something to that effect, because the problem is people then just move people to buyer because they're a buyer lead, but then the system's not really working for you. You just got all these people in buyer, but they're not really buyers, they're just buyer leads. And so I really like buyer seller or buyer and seller as a tag. Because again, the problem is, what if they're a buyer and a seller? You can't have them in 2 stages at the same time. So now you've got a buyer stage, you got a seller stage, you got a buyer and seller stage. What happens if they sell and they can't find something to buy? I mean, the rabbit hole continues to deepen when you start adding stages. One other good pro tip on stages, I work with a number of people that do like a contact stage, but name it like either do not market, or it's not necessarily a don't contact. It's not necessarily somebody that said like, hey, remove me. But sometimes people have other agents in here. They may not want to see their newsletter content, or certainly maybe that's a stage that, again, we may or may not go this deep today. It has an automation that turns off all the action plans when they get moved to that. But I like having a stage that's really clearly like, I don't want to delete this person, but they don't need attention from us. Megan, do you have any other stages that you guys kind of see or maybe recommend, at least at a high level?
No, I think these are really good. I like the contact newsletter, contact, do not market. There's just so many variations. I mean, we see so many different stages, but I kind of go back to your point of simplify and know what these mean, because I think one thing we'll definitely talk about today is how these tie to smart lists and how they can tie to other things like automations. And making sure that you just have a really clear list, it's so much more powerful. We definitely talk to people that are like really hung up on having like, no, but I need one for this and for this and for this and for this. And then all of a sudden you've got like 25 stages, but they stop working for you.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. And you stop working them as well.
And I think the bigger your company is, and this applies to everything, the bigger your company is, the fewer you need to have on some level. If you have 50 agents that are trying to remember like what is hot, what does hot prospect mean? Because in and of itself, it does, all it means is does that mean they're pre-approved? Does that mean they actually want to talk to you? Does that just mean they're looking at a lot of properties? Like you'll have to kind of define these for it to even still work. So I think just having internal definitions around hot prospect means, they've talked to you and they're willing to talk to a lender, or they are currently pre-approved, or maybe you want a pre-approved stage. That's fine, but be really clear with what those definitions are. So also the chat is great for you guys to drop comments and info in. Using the Q&A is also a great way for us to make sure we don't miss things in the chat. So we're fine with either. Meghan and I can manage both, but sometimes in the Q&A, it's a little easier to say, oh, we're going to get to that when we get to the next phase. So I think, on stages, that's certainly at least the core things. Again, to change the stage, if you're on a specific person, it's simply clicking on the stage here. It'll drop down again in the order that they have. You simply change it, and you'll need to hit the green checkbox to save it, or you can hit return. The return key when you're here, because you do need to save it. This will not stay if you don't do that and go on to another lead. So you'll want to update. That is where you would update the stage.
I would say too, on the, Lee mentioned the pre-approval, and, sometimes you want to add stages for things like that. Sometimes that's best suited for a custom field like drop down, because, you can put, whatever the main kind of stage, but like that additional detail, if you really needed to filter your list by that, or you wanted to track that info. So that's an addition to tags.
That's a brilliant idea. I'm really glad you mentioned that. And another thing I would recommend on that is we'll dive into that real quick, because I do agree, Meghan. To me, it is almost a great way to add additional info to a stage without having 1,000 stages. So what that could look like, and would you do a drop down for that? Is that what you would think? Okay.
Yep.
So
less margin for error.
You're right. And the reason we're talking about that, the difference, and I'm not a fan of this hide if empty, because then if there's nothing in it, you can't find it. It's lovely if you have a whole bunch, but if you can't find it to see, sometimes that can be confusing for people. So what we're talking about is there's 4 different formats for pre-approved for a custom field. Text means you can freely enter text, which is great for things like a spouse name or something that you're going to have to type in no matter what. Date is an important format because it can potentially trigger things based on dates, days before, days after. A number is a more searchable in the way that you could filter and say number is greater than or less than. And a drop down is where you can include specific variables. And the biggest issue with this is just avoiding misspellings. So if somebody were to come in, if this was a blank field and people were able to type, yes, no, or getting pre-approved, and somebody either misspelled one or something to that effect, it won't work properly in your list. So maybe setting up things like this, like yes, no, talking to lender. So now we've created that. You can also reorder these just like stages. Well, maybe. How about that?
You find a bug?
Wow, look at that.
Try it the other way around. I wonder if, anyway, we'll look at that after.
Now it jumped too. Now it's
Noted.
gone. No, is it really gone? Okay, there it is. That's
no,
funny.
there it is.
Yeah. I was gonna freak out if it was gone. That's a little crazy. So now, we could still change the stage on this guy to hot prospect, but then we could also come down here to custom fields and drop down that yes, he's pre-approved. So that's another really important data point, that not only is he a hot prospect, but he is pre-approved. And we could build a smart list around that. I probably wouldn't build an automation around it, but you can use that data to do things in the system.
And also it just sort of informs your follow-up, right? So when we talk through smart lists, like you can pull that column right into a
Right.
smart
Like if
list
you're on
when
a
you
hot
save it.
list, and yeah,
Exactly.
as you just mentioned, you can select which of these columns to display here. And so you would want to go to custom fields and then select pre-approved. And now it is visible in the system. You can also drag them over and resize them. If you really want to get fancy, you can, if you have admin permissions, or not even if you have any permission, but be careful with this, but you could also update the list now. And the list is going to maintain this order of columns and sizing of the columns specific to that list. So now you can search simply for people who, are pre-approved, include yes. So now I've got my list just of my hot prospects that are pre-approved. That was good. I'm glad you mentioned that, Megan. That really is a great way to add details to stages without having a bajillion stages.
Some of this stuff I'm sure may seem super basic that we're talking about, but as Lee sort of talked about in the beginning or mentioned, these are the things that often people aren't doing, to be honest. And I think it's because it feels sort of basic, but this is really the key to creating a solid foundation and process, and making sure you're taking the time to actually set all of this up. It won't take you that long. You just have to commit to, you know what, this database is a mess. I'm going to commit to 2 hours of making this better.
Yeah, for sure. And that is totally true. This is definitely not as sexy as making automations and making action plans and making, all these other things that are fun to talk about. But ultimately these, it's obviously overused and kind of a bad real estate analogy or pun. But I mean, truly having the foundation of the right stages, the right smart lists, the right action plans, really is where it's at still. And that's not changing, and that even across any CRM that you would use. I mean, certainly it all makes sense in Follow Boss. We want to be Follow Boss specific here, but the whole point of any CRM is finding good ways to simply organize your people. So cool. So we have got, I think we covered stages pretty thoroughly. I think that's safe to say. One other important point, just to be basic without being too crazy, but again, no thing is too basic to help people be a power user. When you're here in the people screen or wherever you're viewing people in a list like this, you can always drill down here as well through what are called filters. So if I wanted to easily get here to the people, we looked at smart lists a little bit, but if I wanted to just drill down and say, show me all my people who are in nurture. Well, that's a bad example because I don't have anybody in nurture in this account. And you can do multiples here. I think most people are in lead in this, I'm sad to say, so I'll just add lead. And then you can add multiple filters across this search. So you can come here to phone and say, okay, show me people who are in stage lead or nurture, who have a good phone number, who also, this isn't a great example, but who also have an email. So we're basically drilling down. So speaking of drilling down into the most relevant people for you at this particular moment, because at some point you should be checking in on certainly your hot prospects and your active clients. That's definitely a thing that you should be doing. But that said, what about, finding, okay, now it's prospecting time. Now I want to find that Zillow lead that came in 6 months ago that has a phone number, and I'm just going to go through this and dial a bunch of old leads. I think it's important that we differentiate our prospecting time as well from our, hey, let's check in on our hot people as well, but let's not, kind of forget the difference. And so that's how that works. And essentially all a smart list is saving any number of criteria that you've used to filter down here. So if this is something I want to save as a prospecting smart list, I can just come here, make sure you don't hit update because that's going to update the one you're in. Make sure you hit the plus and you can save this. I'll just go ahead and do it. My team's going to get mad at me because I'm now editing the account that we were trying to set up to be nice and pretty. We'll call this a prospect list. So now you've got it up here for easy reference. So you can be here just hanging out. And then when it's prospecting time, hit that list. Now you've got all these people. Another, again, quick pro tip. If you click on the first person, you can also toggle through all the contacts here. So if you were going to send an email or send an email template or send a text, you could do that here and then just scroll to the next one, send another template or paste the text, go to the next person. Really easy to toggle through. I mean, you could seriously hit 100 people here in a couple of minutes if you were, doing this well, and if you had it all kind of set up to work for you. So, and smart lists can be, I mean, Megan, they can be just about any data point. They can be stages, last communication was, just about anything.
Yeah, we always recommend you have, the list that at least some of them that we put in there. And so those are really great. I mean, one note here is, so we build lists based on stage and last communication. So, stage is lead, last communication was over 12 hours ago. So that you're hitting those leads every day for a certain number of days. And then, the hot leads twice a week. You can change all of this. If you change your stages that are pre-populated in your account, then build lists off of those core stages, right? That's the first thing I do. Then recently active, if you are a team that has an integrated website, you have our pixel, that's a great beginning list for that because it's going to show you people that are returning to your site. Another great one to have. But yeah, you can build as many lists as you really want. You can turn these into call lists. I mean, but the point of these really is at least your core list, say your 5 to 7 lists, are the ones that you're checking every day, right? Or at least a couple of times a week. So those are the ones you want to bring to list 0 is what we call it. You want to go through, reach out, and people drop off the list until, say, the next day that they're meant to pop back on.
Yeah, and how that would be done. So I added the last communication field here. So you would click on that, and then there's a number of criteria baked into that. So you can say last communication was more than 3 days ago. Now there's not going to be any communication in this demo account, but so they're all going to be more than 3 days ago. So, but to Megan's point, when you log communication with one of these people, and communication, Megan, is defined as, let me see if I can get this right. I'm probably going to get schooled here. Them replying to an email, correct? Like a sent email through the system doesn't count as, does that count as a communication?
All calls, and here's the thinking behind this, all logged calls or incoming calls, texts through the system, obviously, and then emails sent or replied are counting. So it's looked at if it's you doing that, you prompted that, it's your call or your
Right.
email, then you actioned somebody. And if they're returning a text or an email, that's going to show up in your inbox. So of course you're going to reply to that sort of thing. So it kind of keeps the ball rolling.
So, and that makes sense. So under last communication, it does include sent. You can also add that additional column for call made versus received, and for, I think, text versus received. And maybe was it email too?
Yeah. So in each, you can pop those open, call.
Yeah.
See,
So
it's
sent,
you can
received,
really go crazy
attached.
here.
Yeah.
For sure. You have that one checked off, actually, which I always like to talk about, is that last email activity. That can be super useful for building lists as well. Because if you're looking to find people that are engaged and active, website activity is great. Who's opening your emails? Who's clicking on your emails? That sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then similar to all the other things we talked about, these can be saved as that smart list criteria. And also, I mentioned this, but I want to be really clear about it too. this specific setup is going to be saved in that smart list. So you can have different columns in different smart lists. If your smart list is just, leads that came in recently or hot prospects, maybe you don't need to see some of these things. So these can be different, essentially for everyone. One other quick point too, that's really important. The order of these, even when done in the owner account, does not reflect in the user accounts. So there's two great solutions to that. One is people will number them. So they're just numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The other, well, that's probably the main one. The other thing I do is I tend to just make videos for people, and I'm like, okay, go here and drag this one here and that one there. So if you're here on anywhere on the people screen, you can be in a smart list or not. Go to manage lists, and then you can just reorder them or clean some up or delete them. Or you can also make these private. So if you are a team owner and you want to have a recruiting list, you can make it where only you see that list and not the rest of the team. So if you just go to edit, you can select who sees those lists. I work with some people that have kind of different divisions, even that have different smart lists. And really great pro tip, if you're a platform user, you can actually assign smart lists by team and platform. And that, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, that is where you can actually kind of create a team within a team, whether it's like a team at your brokerage or a sales manager. And you can actually apply those smart lists to that entire team instead of to a specific user or users.
Yeah, just to go back to what you said about numbering them, if you are a team lead or an admin, somebody who's putting together core lists for your team, do that. Definitely number them 1, 2, like super easy for everybody to follow.
And I'm not recommending this necessarily, but if you are truly at a point where you can start fresh, if you delete all of them, and Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, but at last I checked, if you do recreate them from 0, they will be in that order for every user, I believe.
I don't know about that. I can't confirm that.
Somebody on that a long time ago. I know it was true previously.
I don't think I've actually ever seen anybody that's been around for a while go ahead and delete them all, nor actually in the beginning, but
I'm
gonna have to check that out.
I've done it. I know it works because
Okay.
I've done it. It's just been probably 6 months or so.
Interesting.
But yeah, so and Lane had a great question. So you can simply edit them. And so you're literally just adding a number to the name itself. And so now it's got a 1. And so what I tend to do is I go in and make people a quick video, and I'm like, okay, go to people, then manage lists, then drag them, into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 order so that they're in this order, because each agent in theory could have their own order, which you probably don't want. But it is an option. Oh, shoot, I always forget that if you click on it, it takes you to it. And if you click edit, you can edit. So yeah, Lane, we're simply talking about the name. And we'll hit that call question in just a second.
To Donald's question though, if you're an agent on it, you can create your own smart list, right? You can start from scratch and create your own. You'll have ones that are also shared with you, but you can also save your own list anytime.
And I don't even know if there's an option, but theoretically you'd be the only one to see that. I don't know if there's an option to share it with the team, but in theory,
you don't want to. Yeah, you should just create it for yourself usually.
Yeah. Although that's also a great point. If you come up with a smart list that would be valuable to everyone, I would potentially take it to an admin or staff or whoever could, if it's valuable to everybody. But yeah, again, to your point, maybe you want to, like, these are my sphere, we're driven by the tag, Donald sphere or whatever. But yeah, that's a great question.
Or just have, to your point, just have a conversation with your team lead. It's the same thing with like email templates. If you have this just killer template and it's working so well and you want to share it with people, then instead of just sharing it, go to your admin or whoever kind of handles everything and say, hey, I've got this great thing, I want to share it. Because then you can do that. The reason we always suggest that is because if everybody shared everything they create, good, bad, sometimes ugly, right? It's like then all of a sudden there's like there's hundreds of templates and like nobody knows what's what, and that sort of thing. Same thing with smart lists. So, very quickly you can have 50 smart lists and they're
Yeah.
not usable anymore.
And also in that, to also just, I think I said this a few times before, but just having a really good naming system, name it what it is and be ultra clear with what that is, whether it's a stage or a smart list or a custom field drop down. Just being really, really clear about that. So, and Jasmine has a great question in the Q&A, just adding a prospect or a lead. So there's a couple of ways to do it. The easiest way to add a single person is just to click on the blue dot up here. And then you can just type them in right there. That's the easiest, just to ready, set, go. You can import people, again, maybe depends on whether you're a team member or a team owner. The importing a CSV is additionally an option, but if you're just looking to add one person, that's the most simple way to do that.
The other thing is if you purchase your own leads, for example, you can actually sync those over to Follow Up Boss too if you want to. And Lee, if you just pop open under admin, and then we go to API.
Yeah.
So if you have your email connected, do you not?
I don't.
Yeah, okay. So then
it's
you
a
have
demo, so I'm not going to connect it to a
okay.
real email account.
Got it. So then you have the option to turn on inbox lead processing. And what that basically means is that we're going to kind of like sort of scrape your email. So if you're getting leads from, homes.com or something, we'll be able to pull that lead in and add it to Follow Up Boss. And because we're pulling it from your email, then if that's a new lead to the system, we'll add it under your name. So that's another way.
Yeah, that's a great way. And if it's much more complex than that, then just hit up support at followboss.com. They're super great with all this, but they can answer specific questions to your account, the type of lead, if you're G Suite or 365. So if you really want to get into detail, support can help. And Meghan, thanks for answering that. I do want to tackle that real quick too, though. So these sessions are always also streamed live to the Follow Up Boss Success community on Facebook. They always appear on the Follow Up Boss YouTube channel, which I would recommend you subscribe to, and hit the alert button, the little bell next to subscribe. It'll let you know when new videos come out. And they typically go out in the Friday emails that come from either Allison or Andrew that will talk about upcoming sessions and recordings from prior sessions. So we try to make these available to you guys. So there was a quick question. Let's go ahead and tackle it just because I don't want to lose it in the chat. Somebody asked about making calls out through the system, Follow Boss tracking the calls from the phone. You would need to, oh yeah, Craig. Hey, Craig. So you would dial it through the app and that would be tracked in the system. It depends on your account a little bit. So if you're a pro level or platform level user and you do that, the call itself will be logged in and you have call recording on, the recording itself will be tracked in the system. If you're a grow, if you pay like a per user, or if you're a single user, it will still log in the system as a call, but it won't be recorded. And either way, it prompts you after the call. Did you talk to them? Did you leave a voicemail? It makes it pretty easy to make a quick note. Anything to add to that, Meghan?
There's just there are a couple of differences in terms of, so basically what Leah is saying, that some of the accounts have dialers. So like a built-in Follow Up Boss number that's an actual dialer that you can call right from the computer, you can call right from the app, and it's like a business line for you. And everything tracks automatically, all those calls and text messages inside of Follow Up Boss. And it's super, super easy and awesome, right? You can turn on call recording. If you don't have a built-in dialer, you can still track those calls, like Lee said, but you have to initiate the call from the app. And if you're an Android user, like you then have to log that call after. It's pretty easy to do. but you log that call right after you've had it, and it logs it, and you can add your notes. And with iPhone, it logs it, but then you're prompted to add notes. So it's just a little bit of a different workflow. Test it out if you're brand new and just get used to it. That's what I would say. My advice here is like, just get used to that workflow and that process and commit to doing it that way, because you're not going to find yourself scrambling, like, who did I speak to? Like, what did we talk about? Where are those notes? That's so frustrating for anybody that's been in that situation before. I'm sure we all have, right? But it's, yeah, just get used to it. Just kind of practice it. Like, call somebody in your family as a test if you've never done it before.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And then the other piece of that too is feeding back into the smart list and the columns we looked at before. By having those logged in the system, you can actually say like, hey, who are the people that have fewer than 5 calls, or who are the people that have 15 or more calls? So again, the more data you're giving the system, the more you can use it to say, hey, who are these people, or how many calls have my people made to their past clients, or what does all this look like? One thing I kind of skipped over, which is pretty silly, are tags. So tags, stages to me are really important, that they are the time frame to transact. Tags, I love it when I talk to people, they're like, oh, we have so many tags, we got to have them cleaned up. And I'm like, not really, unless they're really confusing. But I'm a fan of having a bunch of tags, because, and tags are evergreen. Tags live with the contact until they are manually removed. So a tag is great for Sphere, or this person's a vendor, or this person is an A prospect or A referral. If you're using Buffini style things, like they're an A or a B or a C, referral prospect. This person's an investor, because that lives with that contact. They're still going to be an investor, whether they're under contract, or whether they're a lead, or whether they're a past client. So the easiest way I think to explain it is just that tag lives with the client. One of the other, my favorite thing about tags, hopefully I've said this enough now that it's a little more common knowledge. I actually had a fun session where I kind of blew Tristan and Barry's minds with this. You can actually click, of course, I'm not going to have any tags in here, fine. You can also click on the tag, and these aren't going to have anybody in it except for this. If you click on the tag itself, it'll take you to everyone that has that tag. So it's a real easy way to jump. If you're looking at, say, an investor tag, and you want to find all your investors really quick, or you have a new listing that's great to be sent out to investors, click on that tag. It'll take you to everybody with that tag. I know it's going to be the only person. Oh, look at that. I got 3. And then you can just batch email this oh, right. I don't have a connected email.
We got to work on this demo account.
I know, what's wrong with me. I only have 700 accounts to attempt to maintain. But so you could then send that as an email to them, or you could put them on a call list and call each of them back to back, or you could reach out to them one by one. So tags to me are really, really powerful. And I don't see a reason to limit tags to say, oh, we only need to have a couple of tags. I like having them. What do you guys see, Megan? You guys see a lot of
I mean, I'm with you on that, because when you click into a contact, usually you don't see a person with like 300 tags. You might have 300 tags across the system,
right,
but they're not on one contact. So it doesn't really mess up anything. They're just a good way to describe people. That's how I think of them, right? So when you think about your database and you're trying to drill down to find a group of people, you're looking for those descriptors. So great example of investors. Maybe you are looking for your top refers, your VIPs. Maybe it's, a group of people like, we always hear things like PTA, just different groups of people in case you want to send a really targeted communication, or you're just trying to reach out to a certain group at a certain time. So by all means, also if you go onto that tag screen, Lee, like the
and admin
main, yeah, if you sometimes it does happen on a team where you'll have duplicates, you
right.
can see bad phone here, bad number, but so that's a great example. Ultimately, if you searched up at the top for bad,
Yeah.
It's going to pull all those up. Like you can get to them from here. You can get to them from your people screen. So it's not really, it'd be great if it was just one tag for all of those, but it's not a huge deal is my point,
Yeah, and there's two things on that I want to mention. Number one, you can add them in bulk as well, add or create them and add them at the same time even. So the VIP one was a great example. So I'm just going to pick a couple of people here, and then I can go up here to add or remove tags, and I can even create a tag here. So I like the mention of the VIP one, and that doesn't exist yet, but I can create a new tag VIP right here. When I hit add tags, it just added it to those 5 people. And so now those people all have that tag. And so now even if I go here and click on one and click on that tag, now it takes me back to those 5 people. But something that Megan mentioned that I wanted to be sure to cover, I don't know if tags is even on here. So let me get tags added. It is nice to have so few people on a list. You can get to the scroll bar very easily though. That's kind of a new thing for me. And if you want to move it over here, one of the other cool things, similar to what Megan said about the bad tag, when you come here and you can actually, if you're filtering by a tag like bad phone number, if you type in bad, number one, it's going to show you each of them. But what's great is if once you add this bad underscore number, it's no longer going to be in the list. So now you can go here to bad again, add the next one. By the time you've added all the ones that have that, they stop showing up in your options. And so it's a real simple way to easily just see that, hey, I got all the tags that are named bad or that have phone in them or whatever. So I'm with you, Megan. I don't stress these. I see some people try to like, well, we got to consolidate and rename them. That's a lot of work.
I'd say also always think about this stuff as like, what's the value add here? How often do I use this information? If it's something that you use all the time and you're like, geez, we're calling this 10 different things, sure, spend the time to clean it up. But I would let go of the things that you actually you aren't going to use, like, don't worry about it. Basically, I know that's really hard for some of us, like they're a little OCD and perfectionists, but really just think about your time, like time spent, like, what am I going to get out of this? Is it worth it? So I'd say that across the board with all this stuff.
Great. So stages, tags, smart lists. Do we want to take a peek at automations next? Maybe is that kind of crazy? Or I think so.
I say let's do it.
Okay, automations are pretty simple, actually. I think a lot of people are confused a little bit on what automations are. They are a newer feature as well. An automation is a specific set of triggers that can happen. It's a little bit like Zapier, if you're familiar. Set of triggers that can happen. And what they do is they trigger an action plan. So some of the triggers that can well, I'll just go right to it. Our stage change. I'll hop right to add just so we can see them. So stage change is a trigger. Tag added is a trigger. A new inquiry can be a trigger. Property saved or property viewed, or a calendar date. So think of these as things that you would use to start up an action plan. And an action plan can obviously do a number of things. It can send an email. It can notify the agent via a task or a note. It can start or stop action plans. It can add a collaborator. It's going to be a good test for me to see if I can remember all the things action plans can do.
Did you say add a note?
I didn't say add a note, but I said it could notify an agent through
Okay.
a note or a task. That's a good pro tip, by the way. Adding a note in an action plan emails an agent, not only the note created, but a link directly to that specific contact. So I'm big into using notes and action plans now. So point being, you could say, hey, when the stage is changed to nurture, we want to trigger a nurture action plan. But once again, not to be crazy redundant, you got to have your stages right to be, and the agents knowing what does nurture mean and what does it do for them to put people into nurture. So this could trigger a plan maybe that sends an email every 30 days or reminds the agent quarterly to follow up with them. Or if after they've been a nurture for a year, maybe it could move them to unresponsive. There are a number of things it could do, but these are really simple to set up. You just click one, you select the stage or stages that you want to use. You can have multiples here. And similar to what we just looked at in the tags, they start to come out of the list as you add them. So it's also a really good feature to say, okay, well, we want, each of these stages, all of these stages to trigger a certain item to happen. You can add conditions, which are kind of similar to the filters. You can say if they have a good email or if the last communication is more than X number of days ago. So you can basically have almost all the same criteria as your filters that we looked at before. And then it'll prompt you to add some other criteria, like they were inactive less than that. That's a weird kind of double negative, but you can choose any number of conditions that would stop or keep this from running. And then the action is simply applying an action plan. I'm sure there are other actions coming in the future. For now, it can only trigger an action plan, which is fine. There's a great number of uses for these that really work great. Oh, an action plan can also apply a tag, which is a great way to power an automation. So that was the one I forgot.
Yeah, so even think about, a lot of times people ask us, like, I want to set this up so it just works for me. And we can do that to a point, right? But at a certain point, you also just need to pick up the phone. And so we're trying to help with that. So as an example, you could build an automation that says somebody just favorited a property, but there's been no communication in X amount of days. So like maybe they're favoriting a lot of properties and you don't want to keep getting notified to call over and over and over again, then that would be the condition you'd set. But then you could have it, notify you as an example, because maybe you're finding, that you're not always getting to that smart list. So there's a lot of things you can do. We always talk about the birthday email example. If you're tracking your clients' birthdays in a custom field, their closing anniversary, you can trigger an automatic email to go out or a notification to call or something like that.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll look at those real quick because there are some really good automations that come baked in, but they are not on. So we'll look at the stock ones in just a second. One last step that I forgot to mention, there's at the very end, once you select the action plan, there's an option to, if you want to run this entire automation only once per person or potentially more than once. So if it's something like send the agent a note that they were back on the site, you probably want it to run more than once because you want it to happen each time that somebody is back on the site. If it's something like sending out a very specific action plan, that's going to be weird if they get it twice. Then you want to be really careful to make sure this button is you have either run once per person. Obviously, like we mentioned before, you want to name it something that really makes sense, like stage change nurture triggers action plan nurture. And then you can hit save. You also do not have to enable this. So if you're trying to set this up and then you want to teach your team about it before you hit go, you can save it and not enable it. So just hit save here. That's going to save it. You're going to still want to name it, unless you like random transformer names, which totally fine if you do. But so you'd want to give it a name. You can save it, but you don't have to turn it on just because you save it. And so some of the ones that come with the system are bad number, which is basically just designed to send an email to people that have a bad number via that tag, which is automatically applied, generally speaking, by Follow Up Boss if the number bounces with an initial text, or if they have a way of knowing it's a bad number, or if you've tried to call and labeled it as a bad number. It will actually send out 2 emails trying to get their number. They basically say like, hey, we tried to reach you on the number you gave us. I think one of them even says the number. Because sometimes people do legitimately just transpose 2 numbers, and getting an email that says, hey, we tried to call you on 2635 can be great, because they say, oh no, mine is 2365. And you're like, okay, great. Well, now I'll call you. The happy birthday one sends an email with a GIF of a dog jumping on a trampoline. Pro tip, if you really want to be good, put a note in your calendar to change the email each year so that you're not sending the same email for every birthday. I think hot leads to a lender comes in the system. Obviously, that only pertains if you're using lenders as a user in Follow Up Boss. But you could, when someone's, I believe it's probably when somebody moves to Hot Prospect, I'd assume it could assign to a lender or a lender group. I think these are all, I don't think I made any. I think these are all ones that come with the system except for the one we just made. And you can
And they're
just
all
simply
pretty easy to understand, right? Like, because I know you're going to do that next, right? Like click on that view and you can see
Yeah.
the steps of, yeah.
And
So
another
you can
really
change them.
important pro
Sorry,
tip
Lee.
that no, it's totally good. There's always a little delay, which makes it a little bit awkward. Um, these do not apply retroactively and they do not apply in bulk. So if you trigger this by a tag, and then you think you're going to go into the people screen and apply that tag to 50 people and it's going to run, it doesn't run that way. It does do as a one-off, and again, not retroactively. So it'll only fire moving forward. If you were to use the nurture stage example, it will work for the next people you change to nurture, but it's not going to do anything to the people already in nurture. And one of my favorite features, like everything in Follow Boss, once it's running, it's going to show you here the times run, and that's going to be a blue number. You can click on that blue number and it's going to take you to everyone that automation has run on. So it's a great way to check up on what's happening. Like I've set up some of these where they apply a plan, but the plan doesn't actually do anything for 180 days or 90 days. And so it can be a good way to kind of check in on things before they start going crazy. Like after you start an automation, you might put a note in your calendar just to come back in here and look and check on it before crazy things start happening. What else do we got in basics, Megan? Any questions? You guys can throw some questions at us. I mean, I think email templates are an important part of basics. Hopefully people are familiar, but you can create email templates or use existing templates, and they can be sent as batch emails. They can be sent here as individual emails. And so it just pulls pre-filled content into this email for you, which you can still modify individually before you send it.
I say just on that note, I'm all about email templates. Again, it's one of those things people skip because they're just busy and just take the 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes that it takes to create one of these. But if you are an agent on a team, actually anybody, just have a good naming convention. So if they're for you, I always suggest putting your first name first.
Yeah.
Because maybe you have 10 templates you use and then you can search for them super easily.
Yeah, I did this the other day with somebody. I was like, "Oh, let's find that seller a seller," and I'm like, "Oh, there's 100 seller templates in here." But yeah, totally good point. And there's none in here like that. But if you did name them your name or your initials, it'd be a lot easier to find these. Let's just see if there's something to that effect. So, like the other things, they narrow as you start to add the words. To your point, Megan, I am not sure that I have a phone call that I don't send a follow-up email template after. Even if it's as simple as like, hey, here's my contact info, or hey, nice talking to you. Here's a link we talked about or whatever. I'm just all about email templates. I don't have to constantly search for what was that link again, or where's the thing, or what do I say? These are great for lender intros. Hey, let me introduce you to our lender here. His info is here. His website's here. He's copied on this email. Great for potential, if you're somehow an ISA or something like that, and you're making an intro to an agent, same thing, having a template, this is so-and-so, she's our best agent, happy to link you guys up. It's wonderful to have these. And if you're running a team, it's the best way you can ensure a consistent customer experience by having messaging that is easy to send out.
And you can also, like all of those custom fields that you may create that you're actually tracking information, you can use those all as merge fields in these email templates. So they just pull in that information automatically.
Yeah,
right?
You can't see that here because I pulled the template in and it's ready to send. So it actually filled out his name as a merge code simply from his name here. But what Megan's talking about is there are, why do I not see, can't I use
So
Word? Why are they not here in this?
so go to email templates.
But can't you use them if I'm typing a new email? Aren't they normally here? Am I losing it? Because you can use them when you're composing an email, I thought.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe it's just a funky because
I
it's a demo account.
I don't know. Now I'm gonna double check that
I know, I
thinking.
thought you could. I swear I'd do that, but it's
Yeah, I
fine.
I actually didn't think that you could, but I blame everything on my maternity leave. I lost half my brain. Yeah, no, you can't in a one-to-one email. Just in those
Okay.
templates.
Okay.
Yeah.
All the more reason to have good templates already done. So, and you can use them in the subject. So one of the great uses of this is auto responses for specific lead sources. So you could say, that property from Zillow or that property from Realtor is going to convert at a much higher level than like, hey, I'm an agent. Be like, hey, I'm the realtor.com guy. Is a great use. And you can simply drop these down when you're composing them and see all the options. And like Megan mentioned, man, the property viewed is a good one, or inquiry address is such a good one. Being able to use all the custom fields in this is also really amazing. The
I mean, it's
greeting
such a
time,
time saver, right? I mean, you just don't even have to, the greeting time with good morning, good, it's like, it just simplifies everything. You know, it's such a huge time saver. And to your point, Lee, like your follow-up email. So just think of those times like, oh, I always send a follow-up email when I'm on the phone with somebody or after I'm on the phone with someone. And any of those repetitive things are where I'd start here.
yeah, it's just it's so easy to do. I mean, I literally, it's hard to not have a couple hundred of them, because I literally, every time I talk to somebody, oh, I need a template that says, here's the Follow Up Us YouTube channel or whatever it is. But yeah, those are really great. Similarly, there are text templates. And now you can use text templates and we'll get to the scoring in a super quick second. You can now use text templates in action plans, can't you? Only for the initial text. But I think before, if memory serves, you had to actually type out the initial text, and now you can actually apply a template if you've already got it. So in that text template, again, in loosely speaking, operates essentially the same way as the email template, and you can also use the same merge codes. So also very handy. What I realized I didn't think to cover is that some additional reporting or scoring has been added now to text templates. So it's actually going to show you a score, and it's even color coded to show you if a text is doing well, or if it's not doing well, as some stats as far as also responses and opt-out rates and all that good stuff.
They'll point you to a spammy text. Like if you'll see a notification if something's like, you need to change this, right? To Lee's point, it's color coded. It'll be really, really obvious. And so if you see that, definitely change that template. But this is happening automatically for you. So, I actually had somebody on my team and they were using an email template that they'd created or that we had, and basically it was being blocked by the recipient's email server. And so I said, well, why don't you just take out this chunk at the bottom, because there's a bunch of links there. And so doing that, she was able to send the email just fine. And this is similar. So when you're crafting an email template or a text template, just be really careful about that. Like how many links you're sending, how many emojis, you don't want it to be blocked. So this is really going to be helpful. Nobody really wants to receive a text that says, whatever about me, click this link for this and click this link. And I promise you, probably nobody's going to click those links. They're just going to say stop or ignore you and delete you. So
yeah, and that is, for lack of a better term, somewhat cumulative. So if you're doing that consistently, your deliverability is not going to be as good. And that's part of the point of having this system, is so that you can understand what is not going to get you into texting jail, because texting jail is not fun. I don't know from direct experience, but I've helped some other people get out of it. Just saying. Um, Lane had a great question about email templates too, which is kind of the same as text templates. So to apply it, you would just click on a person, and then here under send email, I did this really fast, so I'm glad you asked this. You just hit templates down here, and you can select the template, and it'll pop in, and you can also still modify it. So you could still say, hey Bill, and I highly recommend this, by the way. I know there's the merge code for this, but you could say good afternoon or happy Thursday or whatever it is. It gives a little more, this is a real human sending this and not a bot. Everybody's kind of keen to autoresponders now. Well, before I go out of that, if I had email connected, you can also use email templates in your batch email. So you could click on all the people. It's not working for some reason. Oh, it was weird. And then if batch email was connected for me, then I could also send a template through batch. Now that template can be edited, but only globally. You can't edit it to each sender. The other big difference that's important with this is when you send a batch email like this, it automatically adds an unsubscribe link. So if you're sending something you would prefer not to have an unsubscribe link, please be careful and wise with this. You would want to send it as a one-off email template. And that unsubscribe link is not automatically affixed to a one-to-one email. But again, be smart with that. You want to keep your email reputation and your text reputation scores good.
One other thing too is you can actually open up a person in that email box and just hit backslash and it will pull up all the templates too. So that's a shortcut.
Under here with the name of it.
Just
so
like
you can
that,
start to
yeah.
type and it'll narrow the name. I'm glad I put it as an example. One important example, especially if you're an admin or an owner setting these up, be careful to use a merge code if and when it makes sense for the sign off. I see a lot of people still where they'll type their name into the template or use something, or if you're going to be sending out, it is also generally a signed agent name that you're using. So just be mindful. Because in a batch email, you can also send on behalf of others. So just be mindful. The best practice, which I'm not necessarily a huge fan of personally, I would maybe leave it off if it's in question and just let the email signature be the sign off. If you're in doubt or if you think templates are going to be sent by other agents, because again, the most normally used sign off is the assigned agent. And if somehow you're sending as, say, an ISA or an admin user to people and you're not the assigned agent, then the email could come from you, but be signed a team member. So just, I don't want to get too advanced, but just be mindful of the sign off. So I don't want to get into routing or anything crazy like that. I think we tackled most of this stuff at a pretty high level. Megan, anything else that we did not cover that we feel, or I don't see any questions, which is great. If you guys have questions, throw them at us. We'll go ahead and wrap up unless anybody's got anything pertinent.
I'd say next step for everyone is just clean out those leads, right? If there's one thing you take away from this whole session, it would be that.
Awesome. Love it. Well, Megan, great to be back on with you.
Great to be back on, Lee.
And thank all you guys for joining and sticking a little past the hour. I hope it was useful and hope we'll see you on the next office hours in 2 weeks. Keep an eye on your email. You guys have a great week.